February 19, 1945. 30,000 United States Marines approaching 8 square miles of volcanic rock. Among them, a 23-year-old corporal carrying a weapon built from the wreckage of a fighter plane. A weapon that shouldn't exist. In 12 hours, it will change the course of the bloodiest battle in Marine Corps history. This is Iwo Jima, 660 miles south of Tokyo. A speck of volcanic ash and rock in the Pacific Ocean. But this island isn't just terrain. It's a fortress. And the 30,000 Marines heading toward its beaches are about to discover that every yard of ground has been transformed into a killing zone by an enemy who has had 5 months to prepare for their arrival. The Japanese commander is Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kuribayashi. He's not like other Japanese commanders the Americans have faced. He's abandoned the traditional banzai charge tactics that cost Japan thousands of lives in previous battles. Instead, he's done something revolutionary. He's turned Iwo Jima into the most sophisticated defensive network in the Pacific War. 11 miles of interconnected tunnels, 1,500 fortified positions, concrete bunkers with walls 3 to 5 feet thick, artillery hidden in volcanic rock caves, machine gun nests with interlocking fields of fire covering every possible approach, and 21,000 Japanese soldiers who have orders to fight to the death from these positions. The American plan seems straightforward. Land on the beaches, secure a beachhead, advance inland, capture Mount Suribachi, the 550-foot volcanic peak dominating the southern end of the island, then push north and eliminate remaining resistance. Intelligence estimates 14,000 American casualties. The battle should last 5 days, maybe a week. But American intelligence has made a catastrophic miscalculation. For 3 days before the landing, the United States Navy has pounded Iwo Jima with 22,000 shells. Battleships, cruisers, destroyers. The most intensive naval bombardment in the Pacific War. Officers watching from the ships believe nothing could survive that level of destruction. They're wrong. Kuribayashi's fortifications are so deep, so well constructed, that the naval bombardment has barely scratched them. The Japanese are waiting in their tunnels and bunkers completely intact, watching the Americans approach. And the Americans are about to land with weapons that cannot break through those fortifications. The standard Marine Corps arsenal in 1945 consists of M1 Garand rifles, Browning M1919 machine guns, flamethrowers, and explosives. The M1 Garand is an excellent rifle. Semi-automatic, 30-06 caliber, accurate, reliable. But it's designed to kill infantry, not penetrate concrete walls 3 feet thick. The Browning M1919 machine gun fires 400 to 600 rounds per minute. It's a crew-served weapon requiring 2 or 3 Marines to operate. It can suppress enemy positions, but it cannot penetrate the reinforced concrete and volcanic rock that protects Japanese gunners. And here's the tactical nightmare. Japanese soldiers inside those bunkers can simply duck when Americans fire, wait for the suppressive fire to stop, then re-emerge and cut down any Marines trying to advance. Flamethrowers can destroy fortified positions, but they require getting within 20 to 30 yards. That's suicide range when you're advancing across open ground under machine gun fire. Explosives work, but again, you have to get close enough to throw a satchel charge or place TNT. And every attempt to close that distance costs lives. The brutal mathematics of Iwo Jima look like this. Average time to neutralize one fortified position using standard tactics is 30 to 45 minutes. Average casualties per position, 5 to 12 Marines. Number of fortified positions on Iwo Jima, over 1,500. This equation is unsustainable. At this rate, the Americans will run out of Marines before the Japanese run out of bunkers. But among those 30,000 Marines is a man who has been thinking about this problem. His name is Tony Stein. He's a corporal in Company A, 1st Battalion, 28th Marines, 5th Marine Division. He's 23 years old. He's from Dayton, Ohio. And before the war, he was a toolmaker and machinist in a manufacturing plant. Tony Stein enlisted in the Marine Corps on September 22, 1942. He was 20 years old. He went through boot camp, infantry training, and was eventually assigned to the 5th Marine Division. By the time of Iwo Jima, he's a corporal. That's E4 in the enlisted rank structure. He's not an officer. He's not elite infantry. He's a regular Marine who happens to have a very specific set of skills. As a toolmaker, Stein was trained to identify mechanical problems and engineer solutions using available materials. In civilian life, that meant designing tools and fixtures for manufacturing. In combat, it means looking at weapons and asking, how can I make this better? How can I solve problems that are getting Marines killed? Stein saw combat for the first time during the Battle of Guam in July and August of 1944. Guam was brutal. The Japanese had fortified the island with bunkers and caves, similar to what they would later build on Iwo Jima. And Stein watched Marines die trying to suppress those positions with standard weapons. He noticed something. The Browning M1919 machine gun fires 400 to 600 rounds per minute. That sounds like a lot, but in practice, it means the gun fires 6 to 10 rounds per second. Japanese gunners inside concrete bunkers quickly learned the rhythm. They could hear the American machine gun open fire, duck below the firing port, wait for a pause in the fire, then pop back up and shoot. Stein realized the problem wasn't accuracy. American machine gunners were hitting their targets. The problem was rate of fire. The gun wasn't firing fast enough to keep Japanese soldiers suppressed. There were gaps in the fire, moments where the enemy could move, could shoot back, could kill Marines. So Stein asked himself a question. Where do you find a gun that fires twice as fast as anything the Marine Corps issues? And the answer he came up with was simple. You don't find it, you build it. The Browning AN-M2 aircraft machine gun was designed for American fighter planes. P-51 Mustangs, P-47 Thunderbolts, F-6F Hellcats. These aircraft needed weapons that could fire extremely fast during the brief moments when an enemy plane was in their sights. The AN-M2 delivered. It fired 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute. That's 20 to 25 rounds per second, 2 to 3 times faster than the ground-based M1919. But the AN-M2 was never designed for ground combat. It weighed 65 pounds. It had no stock, no way for a soldier to brace it against his body. It was designed to be mounted in an aircraft, where the plane's structure absorbed the recoil. And critically, it was designed to be cooled by airflow at 300 miles per hour at high altitude. Without that cooling, the barrel would overheat and warp after sustained fire. None of this deterred Tony Stein. In the weeks before the Iwo Jima invasion, he salvaged AN-M2 machine guns from damaged and downed aircraft. Then he went to work. He removed the aircraft mounting hardware, which reduced the weight from 65 pounds to approximately 45 pounds. Still brutally heavy for one man to carry, but manageable. He welded a custom shoulder and hip brace using scrap metal. This allowed him to fire the weapon while bracing it against his body. He attached an M1 Garand rifle stock to provide stability and a way to aim. He modified the belt feed mechanism so it could function on the ground instead of in an aircraft. And he created a makeshift barrel shroud to provide some cooling during sustained fire. The result was a Frankenstein weapon. It looked like something cobbled together in a garage because that's essentially what it was. The other Marines in his unit started calling it the Stinger. And when Stein showed it to his commanding officers, their reaction was skeptical at best. There was no formal authorization from Marine Corps Command, no official approval, no testing or evaluation. But Stein's officers made a pragmatic decision. If it works, use it. If it gets you killed, that's on you. So Tony Stein went to Iwo Jima carrying a weapon that existed nowhere in the Marine Corps table of organization and equipment. The Stinger had devastating capabilities. It fired 1,200 to 1,500 rounds per minute. It could suppress enemy positions with a volume of fire that no ground-based weapon could match. But it also had serious limitations. At full automatic fire, it consumed 100 rounds every 4 to 5 seconds. That meant Stein's combat endurance with a single ammunition belt was less than 2 minutes, and the overheating problem remained. Without high-speed airflow, sustained fire would eventually warp the barrel and jam the mechanism. But Tony Stein believed this weapon would save lives, and on February 19, 1945, he was about to prove it. H-hour is 0900. That's 9 in the morning. The first wave of Marines hits the beaches of Iwo Jima. 30,000 men from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Marine Divisions landing on beaches designated green, red, yellow, and blue. Tony Stein and Company A of the 28th Marines land on Red Beach 1. Their objective is to advance inland and begin the assault on Mount Suribachi. For the first 20 minutes, the landing seems almost easy. The Marines wade ashore, climb over the volcanic ash terraces, and begin moving inland. There's some scattered fire, but nothing like the hell they expected. Some Marines start to think maybe the naval bombardment actually worked. Maybe the Japanese are already beaten. Then at 09:20, Kuribayashi springs his trap. Every Japanese gun on the island opens fire simultaneously. Artillery from the northern highlands, mortars from Mount Suribachi, machine guns from hidden bunkers. The beaches transform into a killing floor in seconds. The volcanic ash that covers Iwo Jima isn't like normal sand. It's fine, powdery, and loose. Marines sink ankle-deep with every step. Running is nearly impossible. And there's no cover. No trees, no rocks large enough to hide behind. Just open ground under a sky filled with explosions and bullets. Japanese Type 92. Heavy machine guns fire 450 rounds per minute from concrete pillboxes. Type 96 light machine guns fire 550 rounds per minute from hidden positions. Mortars rain down, pre-sighted on every meter of beach. The Japanese have had months to calculate the exact range to every possible position. They don't need to aim. They just fire at predetermined coordinates. Within 20 minutes of the trap springing, the 28th Marines are taking heavy casualties. Men are hit before they can find cover. Corpsmen trying to reach wounded Marines are cut down. Officers trying to organize their units are killed. And the advance toward Mount Suribachi grinds to a halt as Marines encounter the first line of fortified Japanese positions. This is the moment Tony Stein has been preparing for. At approximately 09:30, 2nd Platoon of Company A is pinned down by a Japanese pillbox 75 yards inland. It's a concrete structure with walls 3 feet thick and a firing port 8 inches wide. Inside is a Type 92 heavy machine gun and its crew. The Japanese gunners have a perfect field of fire covering the approach. Any Marine who tries to advance is cut down. The platoon's M1919 machine gun team tries to suppress the position. They fire burst after burst at the pillbox. Some rounds hit the concrete, chipping it but not penetrating. Some rounds go through the firing port, but the Japanese gunners simply duck below the opening, wait for the American fire to stop, then pop back up and resume shooting. This is the tactical stalemate that's killing Marines all over Iwo Jima. Standard suppressive fire isn't fast enough. There are gaps, moments when the enemy can move and shoot, and every one of those moments costs American lives. Tony Stein moves forward carrying the Stinger, 45 pounds of modified aircraft machine gun plus a belt of ammunition. He positions himself 50 yards from the pillbox. He braces the weapon against his hip, and he opens fire. 1,500 rounds per minute, 25 rounds per second. The sound is unlike anything the Marines around him have ever heard from a ground weapon. It's a continuous roar, like a buzzsaw cutting through steel. The volume of fire is so intense that the Japanese gunners inside the pillbox cannot return fire. Every time they try to move toward the firing port, bullets are screaming through the opening. Concrete chips and cracks under the sustained barrage. The firing port is completely suppressed, and for the first time since landing, the Marines of 2nd Platoon can move. They advance with satchel charges and grenades. They reach the pillbox. They destroy it. The position that had pinned down an entire platoon is neutralized in under 3 minutes. Private First Class Merritt M. Savage, who witnessed this, later stated, "I never saw anything like it. The sound was like a buzzsaw cutting through steel. The Japs couldn't even stick their heads up. And Tony Stein doesn't stop. He moves to the next position, and the next. Throughout the morning, he identifies fortified Japanese emplacements, suppresses them with the Stinger, and allows infantry to close and destroy them. Official records document that he neutralized at least 20 enemy positions during the first day of battle. This is a tactical revolution happening in real time. For the first time on Iwo Jima, Marines are dictating the tempo of battle instead of reacting to Japanese fire. The enemy is experiencing a volume of suppressive fire they've never encountered from American ground forces, and it's creating panic. Japanese soldiers who have been trained to time American fire and exploit the gaps suddenly have no gaps to exploit. But the Stinger's devastating firepower comes with a brutal cost. At 1,500 rounds per minute, the weapon consumes 100 rounds every 4 to 5 seconds. Tony Stein's initial ammunition load is a 400-round belt. That gives him less than 2 minutes of sustained fire before he's empty. The ammunition caches are 200 yards back on the beach, and the route to those caches is a gauntlet of death. Japanese mortars are falling constantly, pre-sighted on the open ground. Snipers on Mount Suribachi are targeting anyone moving in the open. Machine guns from northern positions are firing in overlapping fields. Artillery shells are exploding randomly across the beach. At approximately 1000 hours, Tony Stein makes his first trip back to the beach for ammunition. He runs 200 yards across open ground under continuous fire. He reaches the ammunition cache, grabs a 30 to 40 pound belt of 50 caliber rounds, and runs 200 yards back to the front line. Then he does it again and again. By the end of the day, Tony Stein will make 8 documented trips through that gauntlet, 8 times running 400 yards round trip under fire. That's 1,600 yards total, more than 9/10 of a mile covered in open ground while Japanese gunners are actively trying to kill him. But he's not just carrying ammunition. During his 4th trip, around noon, he encounters a wounded private first class who's been hit by shrapnel in both legs. The Marine can't walk. Corpsmen are pinned down and can't reach him. Tony Stein picks him up, carries him fireman style across his shoulders and runs 200 yards back to the aid station, while under fire, while carrying another man. On his 5th and 6th trips, he's carrying ammunition and guiding disoriented Marines back to their units. The chaos of the beach is overwhelming. Men are separated from their squads. Some are in shock. Some are wounded but mobile. Stein provides covering fire when needed and directs them to safety. On his 7th trip, around 1,500 hours, he encounters a Marine with a head wound who's lost his helmet. Without hesitation, Tony Stein removes his own helmet and gives it to the wounded man. Then he finds another Marine who's been hit and has discarded his body armor because it's weighing him down. Stein removes his own body armor and gives it to that Marine. For the rest of the day, Tony Stein fights completely exposed. No helmet, no body armor. Just a man with a weapon, running back and forth across a killing field, keeping his fellow Marines supplied and alive. The mathematics of what he's doing are staggering. Each trip across that open ground, the probability of survival is estimated at 60 to 70%. Those aren't good odds. 1 trip is dangerous. 2 trips is pushing luck. 8 trips is statistically impossible. But Tony Stein makes 8 trips, and he survives everyone. Sergeant Merritt M. Savage later testified, "Tony didn't think about it, he just did it. Every time we needed ammo, he went. Every time someone was hit, he went. He was the bravest man I ever saw." But even the Stinger has limits. By late afternoon, around 1,600 hours, the weapon begins to fail. The barrel is glowing red from sustained fire. The AN-M2 was designed to be cooled by 300-mile-per-hour winds at high altitude. On the ground in the volcanic heat of Iwo Jima, with no airflow, the barrel is overheating beyond its design limits. The mechanism starts to jam. The rate of fire drops. And finally, the weapon stops functioning entirely. The barrel is warped. The internal components are damaged by heat. The Stinger is dead. Tony Stein's response is immediate and pragmatic. He picks up a standard M1 Garand rifle and continues fighting. No complaint, no hesitation. The tool served its purpose. Now he'll use a different tool. By 1,800 hours, as the sun sets on the first day of the Battle of Iwo Jima, Company A has secured its section of Red Beach. The 28th Marines have taken over 400 casualties. Mount Suribachi is still in Japanese hands, but the beachhead holds. And dozens of Marines are alive because Tony Stein spent 12 hours running through hell with a weapon that shouldn't exist. The Stinger fired for 1 day. But that 1 day changed how Marines thought about suppressive fire. Other Marines in the unit attempted to replicate Stein's weapon. After the battle, Marine Corps evaluators began studying the lessons of Iwo Jima, and one conclusion became clear. Rate of fire matters more than caliber in suppressive roles. Keeping the enemy's head down is more valuable than punching through armor. This insight would influence American weapons development for decades. The M60 machine gun, adopted in 1957, was designed for sustained fire at 550 rounds per minute. The M249 squad automatic weapon, adopted in 1984, fires 750 to 1,000 rounds per minute. Both weapons reflect the lesson Tony Stein proved on Iwo Jima. Overwhelming volume of fire wins firefights. But the battle is far from over. Iwo Jima will rage for 36 days. Every 100 yards will cost dozens of lives. The Japanese defenders are fighting from interconnected tunnels. Kill one position and they emerge from another. It's a nightmare of attrition warfare. On February 23rd, 4 days after the landing, Marines raise the American flag on top of Mount Suribachi. Joe Rosenthal captures the moment in what will become the most famous photograph of World War II. But that flag raising happens on day 5. The battle continues for 31 more days after that iconic moment. The fighting in northern Iwo Jima is some of the most savage combat in Marine Corps history. Places with names like Hill 382, Turkey Knob, and the amphitheater become synonyms for hell. Every position has to be taken by direct assault. Flamethrowers, explosives, grenades, and rifles. Yard by yard, body by body. Tony Stein fights through all of it. After the Stinger fails, he serves as a rifleman and squad leader. He's known for leading from the front. He volunteers for dangerous missions. He's the Marine who goes first when someone has to go first. By March 19th, the battle has been raging for exactly 1 month. Over 20,000 American casualties. The 28th Marines have suffered over 50% casualties. The Japanese defenders are nearly extinct. Of the original 21,000 Japanese soldiers, only a few hundred remain alive, and they're fighting from the last fortified positions in northern Iwo Jima. On March 19th, Company A is assaulting one of these positions. Heavy Japanese machine gun fire is pinning down the platoon. It's a scenario that's been repeated thousands of times over the past month. Someone has to locate the enemy position. Someone has to advance under fire to find where the shooting is coming from so the position can be destroyed. Tony Stein volunteers. He's not ordered. He volunteers. He advances under fire to locate the enemy emplacement. And Japanese machine gun fire cuts him down. Corporal Tony Stein is killed instantly. He's 23 years, 5 months, and 19 days old. There are no dramatic last words. No heroic final stand. Just a toolmaker from Ohio who kept solving problems until he couldn't anymore. He's buried temporarily on Iwo Jima. After the war, his body is reinterred at Calvary Cemetery in Dayton, Ohio. The Battle of Iwo Jima officially ends on March 26, 1945. 36 days of continuous combat. The final accounting is brutal. 6,821 Americans killed. 19,217 wounded. Total casualties, 26,038. Nearly 1 casualty for every yard of ground taken. Japanese casualties, approximately 18,844 killed, 216 captured. That's a 99% death rate. The Japanese defenders fought almost to extinction, exactly as Kuribayashi ordered. Iwo Jima produces 27 medals of honor. That's more than any other single battle in World War II. One of those medals goes to Corporal Tony Stein, posthumously. In 1946, the medal is presented to his mother, Rose Stein. The citation reads, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, while serving with Company A, 1st Battalion, 28th Marines, 5th Marine Division, in action against enemy Japanese forces on Iwo Jima, in the Volcano Islands, 19 February 1945. The first man of his unit to be on station after hitting the beach in the initial assault, Corporal Stein, armed with a personally improvised aircraft-type weapon, provided rapid covering fire as the remainder of his platoon attempted to move into position. When his comrades were stalled by a concentrated machine gun and mortar barrage, he gallantly stood upright and exposed himself to the enemy's view, thereby drawing the hostile fire to his own person and enabling him to observe the location of the furiously blazing hostile guns. Determined to neutralize the strategically placed weapons, he boldly charged the enemy pillboxes one by one and succeeded in killing 20 of the enemy during the furious single-handed assault. Cool and courageous under the merciless hail of exploding shells and bullets which fell on all sides, he continued to deliver the fire of his skillfully improvised weapon at a tremendous rate of speed which rapidly exhausted his ammunition. Undaunted, he removed his helmet and shoes to expedite his movements and ran back to the beach for additional ammunition, making a total of 8 trips under intense fire and carrying or assisting a wounded man back each time. He was killed while leading a frontal assault on a heavily fortified enemy position. That citation captures what Tony Stein did, but it can't fully convey what it meant. He wasn't a general. He wasn't a career Marine. He wasn't from a military family. He was a toolmaker who saw a problem and built a solution. He was a corporal who refused to accept that the weapons the Marine Corps issued were the only weapons available. The story of Tony Stein is the story of innovation under fire. It's the story of someone who questioned the system, who built something the system said couldn't be built, and who proved that sometimes the rejected ideas are the ones that save lives. But it's also a story about cost. Tony Stein did the impossible on February 19, 1945. He saved dozens of lives. He changed the course of the battle. And 30 days later, he was dead. That's the price of Iwo Jima. That's the price of war. Every one of those 6,821 Americans who died on Iwo Jima was someone's son, someone's brother, someone's husband or father. Each one had a story. Each one made choices that led them to that volcanic rock in the Pacific. And each one paid the ultimate price. Tony Stein's story stands out because of the stinger, because of the 8 trips through hell, because of the Medal of Honor. But he would tell you he wasn't special. He was just doing what needed to be done. He was solving problems. That's what toolmakers do. The stinger itself disappeared after the battle. It was a field modification, not an official weapon. It was never cataloged, never preserved. Somewhere on Iwo Jima, or in the wreckage of war, that Frankenstein weapon was lost. But its impact remains. When Marine Corps historians study Iwo Jima, they study the tactics, the strategy, the leadership, but they also study the innovation. They study the Marines who looked at impossible problems and found solutions. Tony Stein is a case study in tactical innovation. He's taught at military schools as an example of how individual initiative can change the outcome of battles. The lesson isn't just about weapons, it's about mindset. Tony Stein didn't wait for permission. He didn't wait for the Marine Corps to issue better weapons. He didn't accept that the tools he had were the only tools available. He saw a problem. He engineered a solution and he executed it. That mindset is what separates those who survive impossible situations from those who don't. It's the refusal to accept limitations. It's the willingness to question authority when authority is wrong. It's the courage to build something new when the old ways are getting people killed. But we must also remember that innovation alone doesn't win wars. Courage alone doesn't win wars. Tony Stein had both and he still died at 23. War is not a story with clean endings. It's not a problem that can be solved with enough ingenuity. It's a meat grinder that consumes the brave and the cowardly alike. Iwo Jima was necessary. The island provided emergency landing strips for damaged B-29 bombers returning from raids on Japan. By the end of the war, 2,400 B-29s made emergency landings on Iwo Jima. Each B-29 carried a crew of 11 men. That's over 26,000 airmen who survived because Iwo Jima was in American hands. The math is brutal but clear. American lives were saved because other Americans died taking that island. But that doesn't make the cost any less terrible. 6,821 dead, 19,217 wounded, families destroyed, futures erased, all for 8 square miles of volcanic rock. Admiral Chester Nimitz, who commanded American forces in the Pacific, said of Iwo Jima, "Among the Americans who served on Iwo Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue." That statement is both tribute and tragedy. Uncommon valor should be uncommon. The fact that it was common on Iwo Jima tells you how terrible that battle was. Tony Stein embodied that uncommon valor. 8 trips through a killing field, 20 enemy positions destroyed, wounded men carried to safety, his own helmet and armor given away, and finally 1 month later killed while leading from the front. His weapon fired 1,500 rounds per minute for 1 day, but his legacy echoes across 80 years. It's a reminder that the greatest weapon in war isn't steel or explosives. It's the human capacity to adapt, to innovate, to refuse to accept defeat. It's also a reminder that war demands everything from those who fight it. Tony Stein gave everything. He gave his ingenuity, his courage, his body, and finally his life. He was 23 years old. He should have gone home to Dayton, Ohio. He should have returned to his job as a toolmaker. He should have lived a long life, raised a family, grown old. Instead, he's buried in Calvary Cemetery. His Medal of Honor is in a display case, and his story is told to new generations of Marines as an example of what one person can do when they refuse to accept the impossible. The stinger is gone. Tony Stein is gone. But the lesson remains. When the system fails, when the tools aren't good enough, when people are dying because no one will question the way things have always been done, someone has to step forward. Someone has to build something new. Someone has to take the risk. Tony Stein was that someone. A corporal from Ohio. A toolmaker who became a warrior. A Marine who built a weapon from aircraft wreckage and used it to save lives. A man who made 8 trips through hell and came back every time. Until the day he didn't. That's the story of the rejected Marine whose insane aircraft gun hack shredded Japanese bunkers on Iwo Jima in minutes. It's a story of innovation, courage, and sacrifice. It's a story that should never be forgotten, because the Tony Steins of the world, the ones who question and build and fight and die, are the reason the rest of us have the freedom to tell their stories. If you found Tony Stein's story as powerful as we did, hit that subscribe button and join us as we uncover more untold stories of courage, innovation, and sacrifice from history's most critical moments. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe his legacy deserves to be remembered, and drop a comment below telling us what struck you most about his story. Was it the 8 trips through hell? The weapon he built from wreckage? Or the fact that he gave away his own helmet to save another Marine? We read every comment, and your thoughts help us decide which stories to tell next. This is history that refuses to be forgotten, and you're part of keeping it alive. Subscribe, like, comment, and let's make sure heroes like Tony Stein are never lost to time.